Moment my father was standing at the kitchen counter pouring his morning coffee, and the next he was gone, and I was standing in a funeral home trying to remember how to breathe. He died on a Tuesday. Heart attack. No warning, no goodbye, nothing. He was 58 years old and had never missed a single one of my school plays, my graduations, my bad days, and then he was just not there anymore. My mother had passed 3 years before him. Cancer. So when I lost my father, I didn't just lose him. I lost the last person on earth who had chosen me. I say chosen me because my older sister made sure I understood on the very day we buried our father that the choosing had been deliberate and specific and that it no longer applied. Her name is Lydia. She's 7 years older than me, and growing up, I thought the distance between us was just an age thing. I thought we'd grow closer when we were both adults. I was wrong. She came up to me at the reception. People still had plates of food in their hands. My father's co-workers were still signing the guest book. And she pulled me aside into the hallway and said, very calmly, I need you to know something before this goes any further. You're not actually part of this family, not biologically. And the house, the accounts, everything, it was always meant to come to me. I thought I'd misheard her. I actually asked her to repeat herself. She did. Then she told me I should start thinking about where I was going to live, because she would be speaking to a real estate attorney the following week. That was how I found out I was adopted, not from my parents, not from a letter they'd left behind, from my sister in a carpeted hallway on the day of my father's funeral while someone was playing soft piano music in the next room. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I went completely numb in the way your body does when it doesn't know yet what to do with the information it's just received. I went back into the reception, picked up a glass of water, and stood near the window for the rest of the afternoon. I had no idea if she was telling the truth, but something about the way she said it, the calm, the preparation of it, like she had been rehearsing, made me think this wasn't something she'd invented on the spot. That night I sat on the floor of my childhood bedroom and looked around at everything that had always been so familiar. The dent in the baseboard from when I was 10 and dropped my bicycle helmet. The pencil marks on the doorframe where my dad measured my height every birthday. I looked at all of it and thought, was any of this real? I didn't sleep. My father hadn't left a standard will. He had a revocable living trust, something his attorney had set up years before, and the formal reading was scheduled for the following Thursday. Lydia had already told me she expected me to be reasonable about the outcome, which I understood to mean, don't make a fuss, just accept whatever you're given and be grateful. But something had shifted in me overnight. Not anger exactly, more like clarity. A quietness that comes when you stop waiting for someone to be kind to you and start paying attention to what's actually happening. I called my own attorney Tuesday morning. Her name is Claudette. I'd used her 2 years earlier when I was buying my condo, and she was one of those people who makes you feel like the whole thing is under control without ever being dismissive about how much it isn't. I told her everything. The funeral, what Lydia had said, the trust, all of it. She listened without interrupting. Then she said, don't sign anything, don't agree to anything, and don't let her change any locks. That last part, it turned out, was not hypothetical advice. I went to my parents' house the next morning to pick up some of my father's things I'd been keeping there, some books, a box of photographs. The key didn't work. She had already called a locksmith, the Tuesday after the funeral. I stood on the front steps of the house I'd grown up in and called Claudette from the porch. She told me to document it, photograph the door, note the time, and come to her office. I did all of those things. What Claudette found over the next several days was not what either of us expected. My father's trust had 2 beneficiaries, me and Lydia, split equally. There was also a separate clause that was unusual enough that Claudette flagged it immediately. It specified that any beneficiary found to have exerted undue influence, coercion, or committed financial misconduct against the grantor within 10 years of the trust's execution would be automatically disinherited. The language was specific and deliberate. It hadn't been added by accident. Claudette asked me if I knew what might have prompted my father to include that clause. I didn't, not then. But I thought about it, and I kept thinking about it, And eventually, I started going back through things I had half noticed over the years and never understood. My father had been a quiet man, steady, careful, not someone who worried out loud. But in the last 2 years of his life, he had seemed smaller, somehow, like something was weighing on him that he couldn't set down. I had attributed it to grief over my mother. Looking back, I'm not sure that was the whole explanation. There had been a trip to the bank I'd driven him to about 18 months before he died. He hadn't told me why he needed to go, just asked if I could take him because his license had expired and he hadn't gotten around to renewing it. I waited in the car. He was inside for almost 40 minutes. When he came out, he looked like he'd aged a decade. He said nothing on the drive home, just stared out the passenger window. I asked if everything was okay. He said, "It's fine, sweetheart. I just needed to take care of something." I'd let it go. I wish I hadn't. Claudette filed a petition to contest the distribution based on the misconduct clause, and in doing so, she was entitled to request financial records. This is where things started to unravel, not for me, but for Lydia. Over a period of roughly 4 years, there had been a series of transfers from my parents' joint account into an account belonging to a limited liability company registered in my sister's name. The transfers were structured carefully, never more than $9,000 at a time, just below the federal reporting threshold. Sometimes twice a month, sometimes once, but consistently, reliably, quietly, for 4 years. The total was $260,000. My father had known. The bank visit made sense now. He had gone to see what could be done, and the answer had clearly not been a simple one. You don't easily undo that kind of thing, especially within a family, especially when you're a man who spent his whole life avoiding conflict. What Lydia had not known was that my father had documented it. He'd kept a private ledger, an old-fashioned notebook, the kind with the black and white speckled cover, where he had recorded every transfer, every date, every amount. His attorney had a copy. He had given it to her 11 months before he died, along with instructions about the trust clause. He hadn't confronted Lydia directly. That was so much like him. He was not a confrontational person. But he had, in his quiet way, made sure that the record existed. The court date was scheduled for a March morning, grey and cold. I wore the blazer my mother had given me for my birthday 3 years before. I don't know why that detail felt important, but it did. Lydia arrived with her own attorney, and she looked confident in the way that people look confident when they believe they have the upper hand. She had submitted a declaration claiming that the money transferred to her LLC was repayment for personal loans she had made to our parents over the years, loans that had been agreed upon verbally and never documented. Verbal agreements, with no documentation, for $260,000. Her attorney presented this with a straight face. Then Claudette presented the ledger. Lydia's attorney asked for a recess. The judge granted 15 minutes. When they came back, the confidence was gone. What happened in the weeks after that was slower and less dramatic than the movies make it look. There were more filings, more hearings. Lydia's attorney tried several angles. None of them worked. The ledger was meticulous. My father had included notes, actual written observations about specific transfers, specific conversations, specific moments where he had felt pressured. His handwriting was small and careful and completely heartbreakingly legible. The court upheld the misconduct clause. Lydia was disinherited. The house, the accounts, the contents of the trust. It came to me. I won't pretend that felt like victory. It felt like something that should never have had to happen, like a wound that healed but left a scar in a place you're always going to notice. My father should have been able to tell me himself. About the adoption, about the money, about all of it. I don't know what stopped him. Love, probably. The particular kind of love that tries to protect you from hard things and sometimes protects you right into a wall. About the adoption, I did find out the truth, finally and fully, through documents in the trust records. My biological mother had been a college friend of my mom's. She got him pregnant at 22 and wasn't in a position to raise a child. My parents had been trying to have a second baby for 3 years with no success. The adoption was private, arranged between people who loved each other and wanted to do right by everyone, including me. My mom had been 29. She had dressed me carefully from the start because I was wanted, because I was hers, because that is what it means to be someone's child. The photographs of her looking sad in those early years, I understood that differently now too. She had been grieving something, yes. I learned later that she had lost a pregnancy just before they brought me home. She was happy and heartbroken at once, the way people sometimes are when life gives them something beautiful through a door they didn't expect. I don't think any less of her for it. I think more. As for the claim that I was a mistake from before my parents had met, that was simply Lydia constructing a story that suited her. The timeline didn't hold up, and I think she knew it. The goal wasn't accuracy. The goal was to make me feel like I didn't belong long enough for her to take what she wanted. It didn't work. Now I want to address something directly, because I know it's a question people have. Adopted children have full legal inheritance rights in this country. The same as biological children. There is no asterisk on that. A court will not remove you from a trust because you were adopted. What did remove someone, in this case, is documented financial misconduct. That's what the clause was about. My father understood the law well enough to protect me within it. Claudette explained it to me in her office one afternoon, and I remember sitting there thinking about how much my father had done quietly behind the scenes in the years before he died. How he had seen what was happening and had not been able to stop it outright, but had made sure there would be a record. That I would not be left with nothing. That there would be a path. I sold a portion of the securities in the trust and used the funds to set up a scholarship through my father's alma mater, a small community college about 20 minutes from the house where I grew up. It's for first-generation students studying business or accounting, which were the things my dad cared about most. I named it after both my parents. It gives out 2 awards a year. That felt right in a way I can't fully explain. Like something that had been broken got put back together in a different shape. Not the original, but still whole. I kept the house. I painted the kitchen a different color because I needed it to feel like mine and not like a place I was being allowed to stay in. I kept the pencil marks on the doorframe. I wasn't ready to lose those. The last time I saw my sister was about 3 months after the court proceedings ended. I was at a grocery store in our old neighborhood, standing in the cereal aisle of all places, and she was there. We saw each other at the same moment. She didn't say anything, neither did I. She turned her cart and went the other direction. I stood there for a moment, holding a box of granola, and I thought about everything I had wanted to say to her for months. All the sentences I had rehearsed in the car and in the shower and lying awake at 2 a.m. And standing there, I realized I didn't want to say any of them. There was nothing left I needed from her. Not an explanation, not an apology, not even an acknowledgement. She had made her choices, and they had cost her everything she thought she was taking from me. That was enough. I think about my parents a lot. Both of them, all 4 of them in different configurations. The ones who gave me life and the ones who built a life around me. I think about what it means to belong to someone, not by accident of biology, but by the daily accumulated weight of showing up. My dad measuring my height every birthday. My mom buying me good clothes when I was 3 years old because she thought I deserved to be dressed carefully. They chose me. They did it on purpose, and they kept doing it, year after year in 1,000 small ways. Nothing my sister said in that hallway changed that. Nothing ever will. I keep coming back to that notebook. The black and white speckled cover. The small, careful handwriting. Every date and dollar amount recorded like he was building something. Which, I suppose, he was. My father was not a man who picked fights. He never raised his voice in my memory. Not once. But he was paying attention always, and when he couldn't stop what was happening, he made sure someone would be able to see it clearly after he was gone. That's the thing about integrity. It doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like an old man sitting at a kitchen table with a composition notebook, writing things down quietly because he knows the truth matters, even when he won't be there to speak it himself. He didn't get justice in his lifetime, but he made sure it was possible after. I think about Lydia and what she must have believed about how this would go. She had years to build her plan. She was calculated about it. The amounts just below the reporting threshold, the LLC, the verbal agreement story she walked into court with. She was smart enough to be dangerous and not wise enough to understand that intelligence without honesty is just a more sophisticated way of lying to yourself. She thought she had accounted for everything. She had not accounted for him. There's a version of me that could have walked away from all of it, taken whatever was offered, avoided the fight, kept the peace that was never really peace. I understand why people do that. It's exhausting to stand your ground when someone is counting on you to be too tired or too sad or too uncertain of yourself to push back. She chose the day of our father's funeral deliberately. She chose the moment when I was at my lowest, when grief had made me soft and unsure. That was not an accident. But something in me, call it stubbornness, call it the cumulative weight of every time he measured my height on that doorframe, something said, not this time, not today. And I called Claudette the next morning, and I documented the locked door, and I kept going. Not because I was certain I would win, I wasn't. I kept going because I wasn't willing to let the lie stand without at least showing up to contest it. That's the only kind of courage that's ever really available to us, I think. Not the fearless kind. The kind where you're scared and you do it anyway. One phone call at a time. One court filing at a time. One day at a time. Until you find yourself on the other side of something you weren't sure you could survive. My father understood that. He showed it quietly in a notebook, over 4 years, in a house where he had to keep setting the table for dinner and making small talk and pretending everything was normal. That took more strength than anything I've had to do. I named the scholarship after him and my mother both. I think he would have liked that, the idea that something good came out of all of it, that some kid who's the first in their family to go to college gets a little more room to breathe because of what he left behind. He always believed that's what resources were for. Not to be hoarded, not to be weaponized, to be passed forward to someone who needs them. The pencil marks are still on the doorframe. I'm not ready to paint over them. I don't think I ever will be.